The fluorescent lights in Westbridge Elementary's cafeteria hummed their steady afternoon drone. Evelyn Hart pushed her cleaning cart past rows of empty tables, the wheels squeaking against linoleum that had seen 20 winters. Through the windows, December snow drifted down like confetti from a celebration she wasn't invited to. She was halfway through wiping down the lunch counter when she noticed the girl. Small for 7, with chestnut hair pulled into a lopsided ponytail, the child stood beside the napkin dispenser, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Her navy uniform jumper was pristine, her shoes polished to a mirror shine. But her eyes held something Evelyn recognized instantly. The particular loneliness of a child who has learned not to ask for what she needs. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Evelyn turned, spray bottle still in hand. "Yes, sweetheart?" The girl took a step closer, hugging the rabbit tighter. "I'm Lila. I'm in Miss Patterson's second grade class." "Nice to meet you, Lila. I'm Mrs. Hart." "I know. I've seen you cleaning after school." Lila shifted her weight from foot to foot. "You always hum when you work." "It's pretty." Evelyn smiled, something she hadn't done genuinely in weeks. "Thank you. That's very kind." The girl's fingers twisted in the rabbit's worn ear. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Mrs. Hart, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think?" Lila's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Could you maybe pretend to be my mom? Just for the winter play?" The spray bottle slipped from Evelyn's hand, clattering against the counter. She caught it before it fell, but her heart was already falling, tumbling back through 7 years to another little girl, another moment that changed everything. "Your mom?" Evelyn's voice came out strangled. Lila nodded quickly, words spilling out in a rush. "It's just for one night. The play is next Friday. Everyone else has their parents coming, and Madison Burke keeps saying I don't have a real family because it's just my dad and my grandmother." And she said the girl's breath hitched. She said, "I probably don't even remember what having a mom feels like." Evelyn knelt down, bringing herself to the child's eye level. And that's when she saw them. Eyes the exact shade of sea glass green that she saw in her mirror every morning. Eyes that had haunted her dreams for 7 years. "No, it couldn't be." "Sweetheart," Evelyn said carefully. "Doesn't your father? Dad's always working. He comes to the big events, but he never really sees me. Not like you do." Lila's eyes were swimming now. "You smiled at me last Tuesday when I dropped my lunch tray. Everyone else just stared. And yesterday, when I was crying in the bathroom because I forgot my homework, you sat with me and told me it would be okay." Evelyn's throat constricted. She hadn't realized the girl had noticed her. She'd been so careful, so deliberate about staying invisible. "And your eyes," Lila continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They're the same color as mine. Madison says that doesn't matter. But I think maybe it's a sign. Like in the stories, a sign." If only the child knew. Evelyn reached out, then stopped herself, her hand hovering in the air between them. "Lila, I don't think, please." The girl's voice broke on the word. "Just for the play. I'll tell everyone the truth after. I just want to know what it feels like. Just once." The afternoon light shifted, casting long shadows across the cafeteria floor. Somewhere in the building, a piano played scales, each note climbing higher before falling back down. Evelyn looked at this child, this beautiful, lonely child who didn't know she was staring at her own mother, and felt something crack open inside her chest. "What's your rabbit's name?" Evelyn asked softly. Lila's face brightened slightly. "Flopsy. My dad gave him to me when I was little. He said my mom picked him out before she left. Before she left." The words were a knife, sharp and precise. "Flopsy needs his ear stitched," Evelyn observed, her voice barely steady. "I know. But I don't want anyone else to touch him. What if they break him more?" "Sometimes," Evelyn said carefully, "things need to be broken open before they can really heal." Lila studied her with those impossibly familiar eyes. "Is that a yes?" Evelyn should have said no. Should have walked away, returned to her invisible life, let this sleeping ghost remain buried. But looking at her daughter, and she was her daughter, there was no doubt now she couldn't bear to add one more abandonment to the collection, already weighing down this small girl's shoulders. "What's the play?" Evelyn heard herself ask. "The Winter Princess. I'm the princess who's been lost in the snow." And at the end, her mother finds her and brings her home. Lila's smile was tremulous, hopeful. "Miss Patterson says it's about how love can survive even the coldest winters." Of course it was. "Okay," Evelyn whispered. "I'll be there." Lila launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around Evelyn's neck with such fierce joy that for a moment, Evelyn forgot all the reasons this was impossible. She simply held her daughter, really held her for the first time in 7 years. When they finally separated, Lila was beaming. "Thank you, Mrs. Hart. You're the nicest person in the whole world." As the girl skipped away, Flopsy bouncing in her arms, Evelyn remained kneeling on the cafeteria floor. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished counter, and for the first time since she'd returned to Boston 3 months ago, she let herself really see it. The face of a woman who had lost everything and somehow survived. But survival, she was learning, was only the beginning. That night, in her studio apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant in Dorchester, Evelyn sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold between her hands. Through the wall, she could hear her neighbor's television, some game show where people shouted their joy at winning things they didn't need. She pulled a box from under her bed, the one she'd promised herself she'd never open again. Inside, beneath layers of tissue paper that crinkled like autumn leaves, lay the artifacts of her old life. A hospital bracelet, infant-sized, with baby girl Donovan printed in smudged ink. A wedding photo she'd never had the courage to destroy. A letter she'd written but never sent. The photo showed a younger version of herself, radiant in ivory silk, standing next to Ethan Donovan. He'd been 31 then, already taking over his father's real estate empire, already learning to wear power like a second skin. In the picture, his hand rested on her waist with a possessiveness she'd mistaken for love. They'd met at a charity gala. She'd been serving canapes to pay her way through community college. He'd been the prince of Boston's business elite. It had been a fairy tale, right up until it became a nightmare. The pregnancy had been unplanned, but welcomed. Evelyn remembered the way Ethan's face had lit up when she told him, how he'd immediately started planning nurseries and trust funds. His mother, Margaret Donovan, had been less enthusiastic. "You need to understand," Margaret had said during one of their tense lunches at the Harvard Club, "that the Donovan name carries certain expectations, certain standards." Evelyn had nodded, trying to be the daughter-in-law Margaret wanted, slowly erasing herself in the process. The birth had been difficult. 23 hours of labor, ending in an emergency surgery that left Evelyn feeling like she'd been cracked open and poorly reassembled. When the nurses placed Lila in her arms, she'd felt to nothing. Just a vast, terrifying emptiness where maternal instinct should have been. "It's normal," the nurses assured her. "Give it time." But time didn't help. The emptiness expanded, swallowing everything. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop crying. She loved her daughter, she knew she did, but the love was buried under layers of fog so thick she couldn't reach it. Postpartum depression, the doctor diagnosed. A chemical imbalance, treatable with therapy and medication and support. But Margaret Donovan didn't believe in mental illness. She believed in weakness, in failure, in women who weren't strong enough to handle their responsibilities. "You're hysterical," Margaret had said when Evelyn tried to explain. "You're unfit. My granddaughter deserves better than a mother who can't even get out of bed." Ethan had been caught between his mother and his wife, and in the end, blood had won. He'd started sleeping at the office, avoiding the apartment where Evelyn drifted like a ghost through rooms that smelled of formula and despair. 6 months after Lila's birth, Margaret had presented Evelyn with papers, a confidential separation agreement, a generous financial settlement, and a non-disclosure clause that would ensure she never spoke about the Donovan family again. This is what's best for everyone, Margaret had said, her voice carrying the weight of inevitability. Especially for the child. Evelyn had signed. Not because she didn't love her daughter, but because she'd been convinced she was poison. That her presence would contaminate this perfect child's perfect life. She'd written a letter explaining everything, the depression, the doctor's recommendations, her desperate hope that with treatment, she could return, and left it in the nursery. She'd gone to her sister in Portland, checked herself into treatment, slowly, painfully, climbed back towards something resembling wholeness. When she'd finally felt strong enough to return, to fight for her daughter, she'd called the Donovan residence. Margaret had answered. Evelyn. How unfortunate. Ethan has made it very clear that you are not to contact this family again. He burned your letter. He told Lila. Her mother died in an accident. It's kinder that way, don't you think? A clean break. The line had gone dead. Evelyn had believed her. For 7 years, she'd believed that her daughter thought she was dead, that returning would only traumatize the child further. She'd rebuilt her life in fragments, new city, new name, new work that kept her invisible. She'd only returned to Boston 3 months ago when her own mother had a stroke and needed expensive nursing care. The job at Westbridge had been advertised as an evening position, hours when children would be gone, when she could clean the ghosts of their day without confronting the living reality of what she'd lost. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Now, sitting in her small apartment with the tea gone cold and the game show audience cheering through the wall, Evelyn picked up her phone. She pulled up the Westbridge Elementary website and navigated to the staff directory. It took 3 clicks to find him. Ethan Donovan. Listed under Parent Advisory Board. Chair. His photo showed an older, harder version of the man she'd married. The laugh lines around his eyes had deepened into something more severe. His dark hair was threaded with silver at the temples, but his eyes, gray as winter storms, still held that same intensity, that same certainty that the world would bend to accommodate his will. Beside his name, in smaller text, father of Lila Donovan, grade 2, her daughter, their daughter, the child who thought her mother was dead. Evelyn closed the browser and sat in the dark, listening to the city breathe outside her window. She thought about Lila's request, about the winter play and the role of the mother who returns from the cold. She thought about fairy tales and their lies, about the stories we tell children to help them sleep, and she thought about Friday night, when she would step onto that stage and pretend to be what she had always, actually, been. The backstage area of Westbridge Elementary smelled of tempera paint, sawdust, and the particular electricity of children preparing for performance. Evelyn had arrived early, using her custodian's key to slip in through the loading dock, avoiding the front entrance where parents and teachers gathered. She found Lila in the costume room, struggling with a dress made of layers of white tulle, meant to evoke snow and ice. The zipper had caught, and the girl's face was scrunched in frustration. "Let me help," Evelyn said softly. Lila spun around, her face transforming. "Mrs. Hart." "You came." "I said I would." Evelyn knelt behind the girl, carefully working the fabric free from the zipper's teeth. "There. All fixed." "Miss Patterson says we should practice our scene," Lila said, spinning to make the skirt float. "The one where the winter princess finds her mother in the forest. Show me your lines." Lila pulled a crumpled script from her backpack. The pages were covered in careful, childish annotations. Blocking notes, emotion reminders, drawings of snowflakes in the margins. She'd clearly taken her role seriously. "Okay. So I enter from stage left. And I've been wandering through the Winter Kingdom for 3 years, looking for my mom. And then, I see you. I see the Queen standing by the frozen fountain." Lila positioned herself across the room. "Ready?" Evelyn nodded, her heart climbing into her throat. Lila took a deep breath. And suddenly she wasn't a 7-year-old in a too large dress anymore. She was the Winter Princess, her small frame somehow conveying years of loss and longing. "Mother?" Lila's voice carried across the room. Is it truly you? I've searched through 3 winters. They told me you were lost to the cold forever. Evelyn's mind went blank. She hadn't looked at the script, didn't know her lines, but standing there, watching her daughter perform this scene about abandonment and return, the words came anyway. My child, Evelyn heard herself say. I never left. I was always here, watching over you. Even when you couldn't see me. Even when the snow was too thick and the wind too loud, I was here. Lila took a step forward. But why didn't you call to me? Why did you let me think I was alone? Because I was afraid, Evelyn whispered, no longer acting. Afraid that I wasn't strong enough to be what you needed. Afraid that my love, however deep, wasn't the kind of love that could keep you warm. But you look kind, Lila said, her scripted line landing with perfect innocence. You look like you could keep anyone warm. Something broke in Evelyn's chest. She sank to her knees, no longer the queen, just a mother faced with the daughter she'd abandoned. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and unexpected. I'm sorry, Evelyn choked out. I'm so sorry. Lila dropped character instantly, rushing forward. Mrs. Hart, are you okay? Did I say something wrong? No, sweetheart. You were perfect. You are perfect. Evelyn wiped at her face, trying to compose herself. The scene is very moving. Lila hugged her, small arms surprisingly strong. It's okay to cry. Miss Patterson says the best performances make people feel real feelings. They ran through the scene 3 more times. With each repetition, Evelyn found it easier to stay in character, to channel her grief into the Winter Queen's regret without letting it overwhelm her. Lila was a natural performer, hitting every emotional beat with an honesty that came from somewhere true. During a break, while Lila practiced her curtsy, Evelyn noticed the stuffed rabbit sitting on a folding chair. Flopsy came to watch, Lila explained, following her gaze. He goes everywhere with me. Dad says I'm too old for stuffed animals, but I don't care. Your dad sounds very practical. He's always practical. Lila picked up the rabbit, examining his threadbare ears. Sometimes I wish he was more. I don't know. More like in stories, where dads come home and ask about your day and actually listen to the answer. He must be very busy. That's what grandmother says. She says dad is building an empire, and empires require sacrifice. Lila paused. I think I'm the sacrifice. The casual way she said it, this devastating truth delivered in the same tone another child might use to discuss the weather, made Evelyn want to storm the Donovan mansion and shake some sense into the man she'd once loved. You're not a sacrifice, Evelyn said firmly. You're a whole person, deserving of attention and love and time. Don't ever let anyone make you believe otherwise. Lila studied her with those sea-glass eyes. Is that what happened to you, Mrs. Hart? Did someone make you believe you weren't important? Too perceptive, this child. Too aware of the way the world worked. Once, Evelyn admitted. But I'm learning to believe differently now. They worked until the janitor's closet had to be locked for the night. As they gathered their things, Miss Patterson, a young teacher with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers, poked her head into the costume room. Lila, I've been looking everywhere. Your driver's waiting, she noticed Evelyn. Oh, Mrs. Hart. Thank you for staying late with her. These winter play rehearsals do run long. It's my pleasure, Evelyn said, meaning it completely. Miss Patterson pulled out her phone. Would you two mind if I took a quick picture? For the class memory book? This is such a sweet student-faculty bonding moment. Before Evelyn could protest, the teacher snapped a photo, Lila leaning against Evelyn's side, both of them smiling, Flopsy clutched between them like a peace offering from the universe. Perfect, Miss Patterson said, already tapping at her screen. I'll add it to the winter play album. The parents love seeing behind-the-scenes content. Ice flooded Evelyn's veins. Maybe we shouldn't, but the damage was done. The photo was uploaded, shared, digitized into permanence. As Lila skipped toward the exit, turning back to wave one more time, Evelyn stood frozen in the costume room, surrounded by fabric, snow, and cardboard trees. Through the walls, She could hear other children being picked up by their parents, voices calling names, car doors slamming in the parking lot. She'd been so careful for 3 months, so invisible. And now, with one rehearsal, one photograph, she'd lit a beacon that might lead Ethan Donovan straight to her door. But looking at the empty space where Lila had stood, at the small handprint left on the dusty mirror, Evelyn couldn't bring herself to regret it. Some lights, once kindled, were meant to burn. Ethan Donovan's corner office on the 32nd floor of Donovan Holdings commanded a view of Boston Harbor that most people only saw in postcards. On clear days, you could watch the ships coming in, carrying goods from distant ports, feeding the engine of commerce that his family had helped build over 3 generations. Tonight, he wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at his phone, watching a 23-second video on a loop for the 15th time. The clip had been forwarded to him by Amanda Chen, one of the administrative assistants whose children attended Westbridge. The subject line read, "Thought you'd want to see this sweet moment with Lila." The video showed a small costume room, lit by overhead fluorescents that cast everything in that particular institutional glow. His daughter stood in a white dress that looked 2 sizes too large, practicing some theatrical gesture. And beside her, kneeling to adjust the dress's hem, was a woman with auburn hair pulled back in a simple bun. The woman looked up at Lila, laughing at something the girl said, and the camera caught her face in profile. Just for a second. Just long enough. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. It couldn't be. Evelyn was dead. Not literally dead, his mother had been very clear about that distinction, but dead to them, disappeared into whatever life she'd built after signing away her rights to their daughter. He'd spent 7 years training himself not to think about her, not to wonder what had become of the woman he'd failed so completely. But that profile, those eyes, the way she touched Lila's shoulder with a tenderness that made his chest ache. He rewound the video again, paused it, stared at the frozen image until the shapes stopped making sense. His desk phone buzzed. "Mr. Donovan, your mother is on line 1. Of course she was. Margaret Donovan had a 6th sense for inconvenient moments. "Transfer her," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Ethan." His mother's voice carried its usual aristocratic precision. "I understand there's a video circulating from Lila's school. Have you seen it? I'm looking at it now. And? It's nothing. Just Lila with one of the staff members. The custodian, I'm told. A woman named Evelyn Hart." A pause, deliberate and loaded. Hart was my grandmother's maiden name. Quite a coincidence. Ethan sat forward in his leather chair, his free hand gripping the armrest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that some people are very good at reinventing themselves. New name, new city, new life. But certain things, eye color, for instance, or the shape of a face, are harder to change. She wouldn't dare come back, wouldn't she? She gave birth to that child, Ethan. Whatever her weaknesses, whatever her unsuitability as a mother, that biological connection remains. Some women can't let go. You told me she wanted nothing to do with us. You said she'd moved on. I said what needed to be said to protect this family. As I always have." Margaret's voice softened slightly, which somehow made it more menacing. "Darling, you need to understand something. That woman nearly destroyed you 7 years ago. She was unstable, erratic, wholly unsuited to the responsibilities of motherhood. We did what was necessary." "We?" The word came out sharp. "I don't remember being part of that decision. You were drowning in your own guilt and confusion. Someone had to be clear-headed. Someone had to protect Lila from a mother who couldn't get out of bed to feed her, who would hold her and cry as if the child were a burden instead of a blessing." Ethan closed his eyes, remembering. The apartment that always smelled faintly of sour milk and desperation. Evelyn in the rocking chair at 3 in the morning. Staring at the wall while Lila screamed in her crib, the way his wife had looked at him with eyes that seemed to see through him to some terrible truth beyond. "She was sick," he said quietly. The doctors said many things. They also said she was a danger to herself and potentially to the child. Do you really want that woman near Lila now? After all this time? Through his office window, Ethan could see the city spreading out in all directions, 1,000 small lights against the darkness. Each one a life, a story, a collection of choices that led to this exact moment. I need to go to the school, he said. Ethan, I need to see for myself. He hung up before his mother could respond, then immediately opened his contacts and scrolled to Gregory Walsh, his head of security. Greg, I need you to find everything you can on an employee at Westbridge Elementary. Name is Evelyn Hart. Started working there about 3 months ago. I need employment records. Background check. Current address. Everything. How quickly do you need this? Yesterday. I'll get on it. Ethan ended the call and pulled up the video one more time. He expanded it, trying to see more details. The woman's hands as she adjusted Lila's costume, no wedding ring. Her face when she looked at his daughter, an expression of such naked longing that it felt voyeuristic to witness. And Lila. God. Lila looked happy. Genuinely. Unself-consciously happy. In a way he hadn't seen in months. Maybe years. His daughter had been asking questions lately. Questions about her mother that he'd deflected with vague stories about a woman who'd loved her but couldn't stay. He'd tried to make it sound noble, romantic, even a sacrifice made for everyone's good. Lila had listened with the polite patience of a child who knows she's being lied to. Dad, she'd asked last month, sitting in his study while he reviewed quarterly reports, do you think Mom ever thinks about me? He'd looked up from his laptop, caught off guard. Of course she does, Princess. How do you know? If she left when I was a baby, how would you know what she thinks now? Because you're unforgettable. Anyone who knew you could never stop thinking about you. Lila had considered this. Madison's mom had to go away for a while because she was sad. But she came back. And now she brings Madison cookies after soccer practice. A pause. Why didn't my mom come back when she stopped being sad? He hadn't had an answer. Not one that a 7-year-old could understand, anyway. Now, staring at the frozen video frame, he wondered if he'd ever had an answer at all. Or if he'd simply accepted his mother's version of events because it was easier than confronting his own guilt. His phone buzzed with a text from Greg. Found the address. Dorchester. Want me to arrange surveillance? Ethan typed back, no. I'll handle this myself. He stood, grabbed his coat, and headed for the elevator. On the way down 32 floors, he tried to prepare for what he might find. A confrontation. An explanation. Maybe even an apology. What he wasn't prepared for, what he couldn't possibly have anticipated, was how seeing Evelyn again after 7 years would make him feel like he was 29 years old again, standing in a delivery room, watching his whole world change shape. Some doors, once closed, were never meant to stay that way. The confrontation happened on a Thursday afternoon, 3 days before the play. In the east hallway of Westbridge Elementary, where the winter artwork hung on clotheslines like bright flags of optimism, Evelyn was on her hands and knees, scrubbing at a juice stain that had somehow migrated into the baseboard grout, when she heard the footsteps. Expensive shoes. Unhurried pace. The kind of walk that came from owning every room you entered. She knew before she looked up. Hello, Evelyn. 7 years collapsed into nothing. She sat back on her heels, still holding the scrub brush, and looked at the man she'd once loved enough to destroy herself for. Ethan Donovan stood backlit by the late afternoon sun streaming through the hallway windows. His tailored suit making him look like he'd stepped out of a boardroom and into the wrong reality. He was older, harder, but still fundamentally him, all sharp edges and controlled intensity. My name is Hart now, she said quietly. Is it? Or is that just another thing you've taken that doesn't belong to you? The words landed like a slap. Evelyn stood slowly, setting the brush aside, wiping her damp hands on her work uniform. Around them, construction paper snowmen smiled their carrot-nosed smiles, oblivious to the temperature dropping between the two adults. I work here, she said. I have every right. You have no rights. His voice was low, Dangerous. You signed them away. Along with everything else, I signed a separation agreement. Not a death certificate. The distinction seems negligible, given that you disappeared for 7 years without a single word. No calls, no letters, no birthday cards or Christmas presents, nothing. He took a step closer. Tell me, Evelyn, what exactly do you call that, if not death? She wanted to scream at him. Wanted to tell him about the letter she'd left, the one his mother claimed he'd burned. Wanted to explain about the phone call, about being told her daughter believed she was dead, about the carefully constructed wall of lies that had kept her away. But standing here, facing him for the first time since she'd signed those papers in Margaret Donovan's lawyer's office, all she could think about was Lila's face when she'd asked Evelyn to pretend to be her mother. "Why are you here?" she asked instead. "I saw the video. You and Lila, rehearsing for the play. She asked me to help her. She asked you to play her mother." He said it like an accusation. "Do you have any idea how manipulative that is? How damaging? I was trying to keep her from being humiliated by her classmates. So you're the hero now? The savior sweeping in to rescue the poor motherless child? That's not. What's your endgame here, Evelyn? Reunite with your long-lost daughter? Collect the family you abandoned? Or maybe you're angling for some kind of payout?" The accusation stung more than it should have. "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" "I want," her voice cracked. "I want to not feel like I'm dying every time I see her walking down this hallway. I want to stop wondering if she's eating enough or if anyone braids her hair, or if she has nightmares and who comforts her when she does." The words were coming faster now, 7 years of silence breaking like a dam. "I want to know if she likes math or hates it, if she still sleeps with that rabbit, if she inherited my fear of thunderstorms, or your stubbornness, or some combination that's entirely her own. You want everything you gave up the day you walked away." "I didn't walk away. I was escorted out by your mother's lawyers, because you were unfit. Because you couldn't handle the responsibility of motherhood. I was sick, Ethan. Postpartum depression is a medical condition, not a character flaw. You were dangerous. I was suffering." They stood facing each other in the hallway, the space between them filled with everything they'd never said, all the conversations they'd avoided when it mattered most. Through the walls, Evelyn could hear children's voices from the music room, practicing scales that climbed up and down like questions without answers. "She doesn't know who you are," Ethan said finally. "She thinks you're just a kind custodian who agreed to help her with the play." "I know. And you're planning to keep it that way? Just play your part and disappear again?" Evelyn's hands trembled. She clasped them together to keep them still. "What would you have me do, Ethan? Tell her the truth? That I'm the mother who left her? That I've been cleaning her school for 3 months, watching her from a distance like some kind of stalker? I'd have you leave. Again. Properly this time. Before she gets attached. Before she starts to hope for something that can never happen. And what if I can't? What if I've already gotten attached? Then you'll break her heart. Just like you broke mine." The words hung between them, unexpected and raw. Ethan looked as surprised as she felt that he'd said them. Before either of them could speak again, a small voice echoed down the hallway. "Dad?" They both turned. Lila stood 20 feet away. Flopsy clutched in her arms, her eyes wide and confused. Behind her, Miss Patterson hovered, looking apologetic and concerned in equal measure. "Lila," Ethan said, his voice transforming instantly into something gentler. "I thought you were in art class. We finished early." The girl's eyes moved from her father to Evelyn and back again. "Why are you here? Are you picking me up?" "No, Princess. I needed to discuss something with Mrs. Hart." "About the play?" "Something like that." Lila walked toward them slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached Evelyn, she touched the woman's hand lightly. "Are you okay, Mrs. Hart? You look sad." "I'm fine, sweetheart. You're crying." Evelyn reached up, surprised to find her cheeks wet. Happy tears. From thinking about our rehearsal yesterday, Lila didn't look convinced. But she nodded anyway. She turned to her father. "Mrs. Hart is going to be in the play with me. She's playing the Winter Queen." "Isn't that wonderful?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Wonderful. You'll come watch, won't you? Friday night at 7? I wouldn't miss it. And you won't be on your phone the whole time? You'll actually watch?" Something flickered across Ethan's face, guilt, shame, recognition. "I'll watch. I promise." Satisfied, Lila hugged Evelyn quickly, then skipped back toward Miss Patterson. "Come on, Miss P. You said we could paint the snowflakes today." As the teacher and child disappeared around the corner, Ethan and Evelyn stood alone again in the hallway. But something had shifted. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was complicated now by the presence of the thing they'd both been trying to protect. A 7-year-old girl who deserved better than the mess they'd made. "Friday night," Ethan said quietly. "We'll talk after the play. Really talk. No lawyers. No mothers. Just us. And, Lila, that depends on what you want, and what you're willing to fight for." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Evelyn watched him go, then knelt back down to finish scrubbing the juice stain that had started all of this. But her hands were shaking too badly to work, so she just sat there on the floor, surrounded by children's artwork depicting a world where winter always ended and lost things were always found. If only real life came with such guarantees. The envelope arrived at Ethan's office via overnight courier on Friday morning, 10 hours before the play. No return address, just his name typed on expensive cardstock in a font that managed to convey both elegance and urgency. Inside was a single piece of paper, yellowed slightly with age, covered in handwriting he recognized immediately, and a note, freshly written on Westbridge Elementary letterhead. "Mr. Donovan, the first 5 found this 7 years ago. Filed incorrectly in what I thought was a parent communication folder. I'm deeply sorry it took me so long to realize what it was and who it belonged to. Some truths arrive late, but they're still truths. Susan Delaney, Vice Principal." The letter beneath was dated 3 days after Evelyn had left. "My dearest Ethan, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Margaret's lawyers have made it clear that I have no choice in the matter. And maybe they're right. Maybe I am too broken to be the mother Lila deserves. But I need you to know that I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay and fight, to get better, to find my way back to the woman I was before the darkness swallowed me whole. The doctors at Massachusetts General have given me a treatment plan, medication, therapy, support groups. They say that postpartum depression is treatable, that women recover, that I could recover. I asked Margaret to wait. 3 months, I begged. Give me 3 months to prove I can be stable, to show that I'm not a danger to our daughter. But she said the family couldn't wait, that Lila couldn't wait. That every day I remained in her life was another day of potential harm. So I'm leaving this letter in the nursery. In the drawer, where we keep Lila's baby book. I'm leaving it because I need you to know that when I kiss our daughter goodbye tonight, I'm not abandoning her. I'm being forced away from her by people who believe that being sick is the same as being unfit. I love you. I love our daughter. And I will do everything in my power to get well so that I can come home to both of you. Please don't let her forget me. Please don't let her grow up thinking I didn't want her. Please save this letter so that someday, when she's old enough to understand, you can show her that her mother's love was real, even if her presence couldn't be. All my heart, Evelyn." Ethan read it 3 times, each word landing like a physical blow. He remembered that week with perfect, terrible clarity. The way his mother had swept into the apartment with her lawyers and her certainty, the way Evelyn had signed the papers without fighting, her hands shaking, her eyes hollow. The way she'd gone into the nursery to say goodbye to Lila and emerged 10 minutes later looking like she'd aged a decade. He'd believed his mother when she said Evelyn wanted out. Believed her when she said the letter in the nursery was just more evidence of mental instability, manipulative, guilt-inducing, proof that Evelyn couldn't be trusted. He'd burned that letter without reading it. At least, he'd thought he had. But this letter, folded and worn from being handled, was clearly different. This was a copy. Or perhaps the original had been misfiled before he could destroy it. His phone rang. His mother, "Have you gone to the school yet?" Margaret asked, without preamble. "Have you dealt with this situation? I'm looking at a letter right now. A letter Evelyn left 7 years ago. A letter you told me was evidence of her instability." A pause. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. She asked for 3 months. 3 months to get treatment and prove she could be a good mother. You told her no. You told her to leave and never come back. I protected this family. You lied to me. You lied to Lila. You've let my daughter grow up believing her mother abandoned her, when the truth is, we forced her out. She was unstable, Ethan, the doctors said. The doctors said she had postpartum depression. A treatable condition. A temporary condition. You turned temporary into permanent because you couldn't stand the idea of your son being married to someone who wasn't perfect. I won't apologize for putting Lila's welfare first." Lila's welfare? Or the Donovan family image? He was standing now, pacing his office with the letter clenched in his fist. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The damage you've caused? I saved that child from a mentally ill mother. You stole that child's mother from her. And you stole 7 years from me, years when I could have helped Evelyn recover. Could have built a family instead of this hollow imitation we've been living with. If you bring that woman back into our lives, she's already back. And tonight, she's going to stand on a stage with our daughter and play the role of a mother who returns from the cold. And for the first time in 7 years, Lila is going to know what it feels like to have her mother present. Ethan, listen to me." "No, you listen. You're done making decisions for this family. Done lying. Done manipulating. As of this moment, you have no say in how I raise my daughter or who I allow into her life." He hung up on his mother for the second time in a week, a small rebellion that felt monumental. Then he sat down at his desk and pulled out his laptop. He had 8 hours before the play began. 8 hours to figure out how to make this right. He started by pulling up Evelyn's employment file from Westbridge. The background check showed she'd been in Portland for 6 years, working various service jobs, living in a modest apartment near the waterfront. No criminal record. No red flags. Just a woman rebuilding her life from rubble. She'd moved back to Boston 3 months ago. The timing clicked into place just before the school year started. She'd taken the evening custodian position specifically because it would allow her to be near Lila without being seen. 7 years of absence. 7 years of wondering and waiting and watching from a distance. He picked up his phone and called Gregory Walsh again. "Greg, I need you to do something for me. I need you to find out everything about Evelyn Hart's last 7 years. Not for surveillance purposes, for understanding. Sir, I need to know if my wife, my ex-wife, spent the last 7 years trying to get better so she could come home. I need evidence, medical records if possible, employment history, anything that shows what she's been doing. That might take a few days. You have until 6 o'clock tonight, whatever you can find." He hung up and looked at the letter again. This physical piece of paper that had survived 7 years of secrets and lies, waiting in a filing cabinet for someone to find it and recognize its importance. Some truths arrive late, but they're still truths. Tonight, he would sit in an elementary school auditorium and watch his daughter perform in a play about a princess who finds her lost mother. And he would see Evelyn really see her for the first time since he'd failed to protect her from his own family. He didn't know what would happen after that. Didn't know if forgiveness was possible, or if too much damage had been done, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was done being his mother's son. It was time to be Lila's father instead. Evelyn was packing when Lila knocked on her apartment door. It was 8 o'clock on Thursday night, the evening before the play. Through her window, she could see snow beginning to fall, each flake illuminated by the streetlights like small promises the world wasn't ready to keep. She wasn't expecting visitors, wasn't expecting anyone to even know where she lived. But when she opened the door, there was Lila, wearing pajamas under a too large winter coat, Flopsy clutched in her arms. "Sweetheart? What are you doing here?" "I followed the address in the school directory. Lila's voice was matter-of-fact. Dad was on a conference call and Grandmother was busy with her charity board. Nobody noticed when I left. Evelyn's heart seized. Lila, you can't just leave home without telling anyone. They'll be worried sick. I needed to see you. I needed to know if you were really going to come tomorrow. Of course I am. I promised. Adults break promises all the time. Madison's dad promised to take her to Disney World 3 times. And they still haven't gone. Evelyn ushered the girl inside, closing the door against the cold. Her studio apartment suddenly felt smaller, shabbier, all the ways it failed to be a home made more obvious by the presence of a child who deserved so much better. How did you get here? It's 3 miles from your house. Bus. I have a student card. I'm very responsible. Despite everything, Evelyn almost smiled. Yes, you are. But your father is going to be frantic when he realizes you're gone. Then we should call him. Lila looked around the apartment, taking in the unmade Murphy bed, the suitcase open on the floor, the sparse furniture that spoke of temporary arrangements. Are you leaving? There was no point lying. I was thinking about it. Because of what Dad said to you? I heard some of it. He was being mean. He was being protective of you. By making you cry? Lila set Flopsy down on the small kitchen table. That doesn't seem protective. That seems like he was hurting you on purpose. Evelyn sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. It's complicated, sweetheart. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain things. Lila climbed up beside her, her small body warm against Evelyn's side. But I'm smart. I can understand complicated things. I know you can. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the radiator clank and the muffled sounds of the restaurant below preparing for the dinner rush. Finally, Lila spoke again. You smell like lavender. Like the sachets Grandmother puts in the linen closet. It's my hand soap. No, it's more than that. It's... Lila tilted her head, considering. It's familiar. Like something I remember from before I remember things, if that makes sense. Evelyn's throat closed. She'd worn lavender perfume when Lila was born. She'd read somewhere that babies bonded with their mother's scent, so she'd been deliberate about it, using the same soap and shampoo every day, hoping it would create an anchor point between them. Lila, Evelyn said carefully, I need to tell you something. I know. You know? I've known since the first rehearsal. Maybe before. The girl looked up at her with eyes that were far too knowing for 7 years. You're my mom. My real mom. The one who left when I was a baby. Sun.com. The world tilted. Evelyn gripped the edge of the mattress to keep from falling. How? The eyes. They're exactly the same as mine. And the way you touched my hair when you were fixing my costume, nobody else touches it like that. Gentle. Like you were afraid I might break. Lila paused. And you cry every time we practice the scene where the Winter Queen apologizes. Every single time. Even when you try to hide it. Lila, I can explain. I don't need you to explain. I just need you to tell me the truth. Are you going to leave again? For real this time? Evelyn looked at her daughter, this brave, brilliant girl, who had somehow survived 7 years without her, and grown into someone extraordinary despite the absence. She thought about the suitcase on the floor, the plane ticket to Portland in her bag, the plan she'd made to disappear before she could cause any more damage. But she also thought about that letter she'd left 7 years ago, the one she'd poured her whole broken heart into, the promise she'd made to get better and come back. I don't want to leave, Evelyn said finally. But I'm afraid that if I stay, I'll hurt you even more than I already have. How could you hurt me? You're the only person who's been nice to me in months, the only person who sees me. Your father sees you. Dad sees the idea of me, the perfect daughter who never needs anything. You see the real me, the one who's scared and lonely, and maybe a little bit angry that everyone keeps treating me like I'm too young to understand my own life. Evelyn pulled Lila into her arms, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and chalk dust and something indefinably hers. You have every right to be angry. Are you angry? About what happened? Sometimes. Mostly I'm just sad. Sad about all the time we lost. Then don't lose any more. Lila pulled back, looking at her with perfect earnestness. Stay. Be in the play. And then maybe we can figure out how to be a real family. Not right away. But eventually. Your father might not. Dad will do whatever makes me happy. He feels guilty all the time. I can tell. Being a family is more complicated than just feeling guilty. I know. But it's a start. Lila picked up Flopsy, examining his threadbare ears. Mom, can I call you that? Just here. When it's just us, you can call me anything you want. Mom, can you fix Flopsy's ear? You said you would. And I think if you fix him, it means you're really staying. Because broken things don't get fixed unless someone cares enough to put in the work. Evelyn's vision blurred with tears. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. I have a sewing kit in my backpack. I always carry one. Just in case. Of course she did. Because she was Lila Donovan. And Lila Donovan was prepared for everything, except the one thing every child should be able to count on. Parents who stayed. Evelyn found her own sewing kit and sat at the kitchen table, with Flopsy between them. Under the overhead light, mother and daughter worked together to repair what had been torn, their hands moving in tandem, creating something whole from something broken. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering Boston in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and possible and new. And for the first time in 7 years, Evelyn let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, some things broken could be repaired after all. The school called 40 minutes later, frantic. Ethan arrived 10 minutes after that, bursting through the door with terror and rage in equal measure. But when he saw his daughter sitting at a small kitchen table, carefully stitching a stuffed rabbit's ear under Evelyn's patient guidance, something in his expression shifted. She needed her mom, Lila said simply, not looking up from her work. So I came to get her. And Ethan, standing in the doorway of his ex-wife's tiny apartment, watching his daughter experience something he hadn't realized she'd been missing, found he had no argument against that logic at all. The Westbridge Elementary auditorium smelled of floor polish, nervous excitement, and the peculiar electricity that comes from 200 people packed into a space designed for 150. Folding chairs lined up in crooked rows, a makeshift stage dominated one end of the room, and hand-painted scenery depicted a forest in perpetual winter. Backstage, Evelyn adjusted Lila's costume one final time, her hands steadier than they'd been in days. The white dress fell in perfect layers now, thanks to the emergency alterations she'd made the night before. Lila's hair was braided into an elaborate crown, tiny silver clips catching the light like captured snowflakes. Nervous? Evelyn asked softly. Terrified, Lila admitted. But the good kind. The kind that means something important is about to happen. From the wings, Miss Patterson gave the 5-minute warning. Around them, other children bounced and giggled and forgot their lines in equal measure. But Lila stood perfectly still, one hand gripping Flopsy, now fully repaired, his ear sewn with neat, careful stitches. Mom, Lila whispered, testing the word again in this public space. Whatever happens after tonight. Thank you. For coming back. For being here. Evelyn kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the strawberry shampoo scent she'd memorized the night before. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. In the audience, Ethan Donovan sat in the third row, his phone face down on his lap, a small miracle that Lila had noticed immediately when peeking through the curtain. Next to him sat an empty seat. He'd come alone. No Margaret, no business associates, no buffer between himself and the experience of watching his daughter perform. The lights dimmed, the audience quieted, and the play began. The first 4 scenes passed in a blur of child actors forgetting their blocking and laughing through their serious lines. The story unfolded in that particularly earnest way that elementary school productions do. A princess cursed to wander a frozen kingdom, searching for the mother who had vanished 3 winters ago. Then came scene 5. Lila entered from stage left, her small figure somehow commanding the entire space. She moved with purpose across the cardboard snowdrifts, each step deliberate, each gesture imbued with the particular grief of a child who has learned to live without hope. "I have walked through 3 winters now," she recited, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. 3 winters of searching. 3 winters of calling your name to the wind. They tell me you are lost. They tell me you are gone. But I do not believe them. I cannot believe them. Because mothers do not simply disappear. In the audience, Ethan's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Lila reached center stage, where a cardboard fountain stood frozen in permanent winter. "If you are out there, if you can hear me, I want you to know something." Her voice wavered, genuine emotion breaking through the scripted words. "I want you to know that I remember. Not your face, not your voice, but the feeling. The feeling of being held, the feeling of being safe. That feeling lives in my bones, deeper than memory. And it tells me you loved me. It tells me you wanted to stay." From stage right, Evelyn entered. She wore a simple white dress, nothing elaborate, but the way she moved with a careful grace. As if approaching something precious that might shatter, transformed the costume into something regal. The Winter Queen, emerging from the forest after 3 years of absence. Their eyes met across the stage. "My child," Evelyn said, her voice breaking on the words. "I never left. I have been here all along, watching over you, even when you could not see me, even when the snow was too thick and the wind too cold. I was here, always here." Lila took a step forward. "Then why didn't you call to me? Why did you let me believe I was alone?" This was the moment, the scene they'd rehearsed a dozen times. But standing here, on this stage, with her daughter looking at her with such naked hope, Evelyn found she couldn't deliver the scripted lines, couldn't hide behind the play's fiction anymore. "Because I was afraid," she said, deviating from the script, speaking from her heart instead. "Afraid that I wasn't strong enough. Afraid that my love, however deep, was too broken to be trusted. Afraid that you were better off believing I was gone than hoping for a mother who might fail you again." Lila's eyes widened slightly. This wasn't the line, but she didn't miss a beat. "But you're here now. You came back. I never wanted to leave. I was sick. I was lost in my own winter, my own cold. And I couldn't find my way out." Tears streamed down Evelyn's face now. No longer performance, but confession. "But every day, every single day, I thought of you. I carried you with me through that darkness. You were the light that kept me moving forward. Even if she's far," Lila recited softly, returning to the script, "she'll always come back to me. That's what the stories say. That's what my heart says. And hearts don't lie." "No," Evelyn whispered, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "Hearts don't lie." Lila walked forward, closing the distance between them, and wrapped her arms around Evelyn's neck. And there, on a cardboard stage in front of 200 people, mother and daughter held each other for the first time in 7 years, with nothing between them, no secrets, no lies, no well-meaning lawyers or protective grandmothers, just truth. Just love. Just the simple, revolutionary act of being present. The audience sat in stunned silence. This wasn't what they'd expected from a elementary school play. This was raw, real, something beyond performance. Then, from the third row, Ethan Donovan stood up. He climbed onto the stage, breaking every rule of theatrical etiquette, and walked toward his daughter and the woman he'd failed to protect 7 years ago. The two people who had taught him that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing were the same thing. Lila saw him first. "Dad?" He knelt beside them both, his expensive suit crumpling against the painted plywood, and put his arms around his family. "I'm sorry," he said, loud enough for the first few rows to hear, quiet enough to remain intimate. "I'm so sorry. To both of you. For everything." Lila looked up at him with those sea glass eyes. "You came on stage. You never come on stage. Some moments are worth breaking the rules for." Behind them, Miss Patterson was frantically signaling to continue the play. The other children were frozen in the wings, unsure whether this was part of the show or not. The audience murmured, whispered, reached for their phones to capture this moment that felt too private to witness and too important to miss. But Ethan, Evelyn, and Lila remained in their small circle of three, oblivious to everyone else. "So what happens now?" Lila asked, looking between her parents. "In the play, the princess and the queen go home together. But this isn't a play anymore, is it?" "No," Evelyn said softly. "This is real life, which is messier and harder, and doesn't have a neat ending written down in a script. But we can try," Ethan added. "We can try to be a family again. If your mother is willing. If she can forgive us." Evelyn looked at him, this man who had once been her whole world, who had failed her when she needed him most, who was now kneeling on an elementary school stage offering her something she'd thought lost forever. "I don't know if I can go back to who we were," she said honestly. "That Evelyn died 7 years ago. I'm someone different now. Someone who's had to rebuild herself from scratch. Then we'll get to know who you are now. No expectations, no pressure. Just presence. Can we start there?" She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Lila hugged them both tighter. "This is the best play ever." A ripple of laughter moved through the audience, breaking the tension. Someone started clapping slow, deliberate applause that built until the entire auditorium was standing, filling the room with sound that felt like permission, like blessing, like the community witnessing something broken becoming whole. Miss Patterson, realizing the moment was complete, signaled for the lights to dim and the final scene to begin. Ethan helped both Evelyn and Lila to their feet, then stepped off the stage, returning to his seat. But before he left, he squeezed Evelyn's hand once. "Finish your play," he whispered. "Show her how the story ends." So they did. Lila and Evelyn performed the final scene as written, the princess and the queen walking hand in hand out of the winter forest into a kingdom where spring was finally beginning to thaw the frozen ground. The other children joined them for the closing number, singing about seasons changing and lost things being found and love that survives even the longest cold. When the curtain fell and rose again for curtain call, Lila pulled Evelyn forward for a bow. The audience stood again, this ovation even louder than the last. And in the third row, Ethan Donovan wiped tears from his face with no shame whatsoever. Watching his daughter experience what every child deserves. The uncomplicated joy of having both parents present. Backstage, after the crowd had dispersed and the other children had been collected by their families, the three of them stood together in the empty costume room. Flopsy sat on the makeup table, his repaired ear standing at attention like a small victory flag. "What happens now?" Lila asked again. "Do we go home together?" Ethan and Evelyn looked at each other. "Not tonight," Evelyn said gently. "These things take time. We need to talk, your dad and I. We need to figure out what this looks like, how to do this right. But you're not leaving? Not going away again? Not unless you want me to." "I don't. I really, really don't." "Then I'm staying. For however long you'll have me." Lila considered this, then nodded with the grave seriousness of a child making an important decision. "Okay. But you have to promise to answer when I call. And to come to my birthday party in March. And to teach me how to sew so I can fix things myself when they break. I promise all of that. And Dad." Lila turned to Ethan. "You have to promise to actually listen when Mom talks. Not just hear her, but really listen. Like you do in your important business meetings." Ethan nodded solemnly. "I promise." "Good." Satisfied, Lila picked up Flopsy. "Then I think we're going to be okay. It might take a while. But we're going to be okay." From the mouths of babes, Evelyn thought, come the truths adults spend years avoiding. They walked out of the school together, not quite a family yet, but not strangers anymore either. Something in between, something undefined, something that would take shape slowly over days and weeks and months of careful rebuilding. The snow had stopped falling. Above them, Stars punched through the city's light pollution. Small points of clarity in an otherwise murky sky. "Look," Lila said, pointing up. "The Winter Princess's constellation. The one from the play." "Where?" Ethan asked. "There. See how those 3 stars make her crown? And that line of 4 is her journey home?" They all looked up, searching for the pattern Lila saw so clearly. And maybe it was real, or maybe it was just the particular magic of a 7-year-old's imagination, but standing there in the parking lot of Westbridge Elementary, they could all see it. A path traced in starlight, leading from cold into warmth, from lost into found, from broken into whole. Some journeys, Evelyn realized, are worth every impossible step. 3 months after the winter play, on a Tuesday afternoon in March, Evelyn sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks from Westbridge Elementary, waiting for her daughter. It had become their routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, 2 hours together before Lila's driver picked her up for dinner with Ethan. Sometimes they did homework. Sometimes they just talked. Today, they were supposed to be shopping for Lila's birthday party, which was now just 4 days away. The bell above the door chimed. Lila entered, snowflakes caught in her hair, March in Boston, where winter refused to acknowledge its expiration date, and her backpack sliding off one shoulder. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the booth across from Evelyn. "Mr. Harrison kept us after to talk about the science fair." "No problem. I ordered you hot chocolate. With extra marshmallows? Is there any other kind?" Lila grinned, that gap-toothed smile that still made Evelyn's heart ache with how much she'd missed. "Dad says I need to cut back on sugar, but Dad's not here, is he?" "No, he is not." They fell into easy conversation, the kind that had taken months to build. Layers of trust accumulated through consistency, and showing up and not disappearing when things got hard. Because things had gotten hard, there had been appointments with family therapists, awkward dinners where nobody knew quite what to say, moments when the weight of 7 lost years pressed down so heavily that continuing felt impossible. But they had continued, because Lila insisted, and because Ethan was learning to put his daughter's needs ahead of his pride, and because Evelyn was discovering that staying was harder and more important than leaving had ever been. "So about the party," Lila said, pulling out a crumpled piece of notebook paper covered in lists. "I know we said small, but I might have invited everyone in my grade." "Everyone? That's 40 kids. 37. Madison Burke moved to California, thank God." "Lila, what?" "She was mean to me about the mom thing. And now I have a mom, so really, I win." Evelyn tried to look stern but couldn't quite manage it. "Still, we don't celebrate other people's misfortunes." "Fine. I hope California treats her well and she learns to be nicer." Lila took a sip of her hot chocolate, leaving a marshmallow mustache. "Anyway, 37 kids plus parents means we need a bigger venue than your apartment, which is why I've been thinking." "Thinking what? Maybe we could have it at the house?" "Dad's house, I mean. Our house." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Your house too, maybe, if you wanted." 3 months ago, Ethan had asked Evelyn to move back into the Donovan family home. She'd refused. Too fast, too much, too many ghosts in those rooms where she'd fallen apart. Instead, she'd kept her studio apartment in Dorchester, maintained her boundaries, built this new relationship slowly and deliberately. But lately, boundaries had started feeling less like protection and more like barriers. "Have you talked to your dad about this?" Evelyn asked. "He's the one who suggested it, actually." "Well, not suggested. More like mentioned. Very casually. 3 times. Evelyn smiled despite herself. "That does sound like him. He's trying really hard. You should see how many therapy appointments he makes me sit through." Lila rolled her eyes with affectionate exasperation. "Last week, Dr. Martinez asked me to draw my family. I drew you, me, Dad, and Flopsy all in a house together. And Dad got this look on his face like he was going to cry, but was trying really hard not to in front of the therapist." "What kind of look?" "The kind that means he still loves you, even though you're not together anymore." Even though everything got messed up, out the window, a bus hissed to a stop, releasing a crowd of commuters into the slushy street. Evelyn watched them scatter in different directions, each person heading toward their own complicated, messy lives. Love is more complicated than that, sweetheart. I know. But complicated doesn't mean impossible, right? That's what Dr. Martinez keeps saying. She says families can be rebuilt, but they don't look like they did before. They look like something new. That's very wise. Yeah, well, I'm paying attention in therapy. Unlike some people who spend the whole session on their phone. Lila gave her mother a pointed look. Don't think I don't notice when you're texting. I'm texting my own therapist, asking for advice on how to handle these exact conversations. Oh, well, that's allowed then. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, sipping their drinks, watching the city move outside the coffee shop window. Finally, Lila spoke again. Mom, can I ask you something serious? Always. Do you think you'll ever forgive grandmother? The question landed hard. Margaret Donovan had been notably absent from the last 3 months of rebuilding. She'd sent birthday cards for Lila, always expensive, always impersonal, but had made no attempt to contact Evelyn. Ethan had been firm. Until his mother apologized and acknowledged the damage she'd caused, she wouldn't be part of their lives. I don't know, Evelyn answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't something you decide to do once. It's something you have to choose over and over again. Some days I think I can. Some days I can't imagine how. That's fair. I haven't decided if I forgive her either. Lila traced patterns in the condensation on her mug. She sent me a letter last week, apologizing, saying she thought she was protecting me but realizes now she was protecting the wrong things. How did that make you feel? Confused, angry, kind of sad for her. Lila looked up. Is it weird that I feel sad for her? After what she did? No, sweetheart. It means you have a kind heart. Which is a gift. Even when it's complicated. Dr. Martinez says the same thing. Well, Dr. Martinez is clearly very smart. Lila grinned, then checked her phone. I should go soon. Dad's picking me up at 5. And we have that dinner thing with his business partners. The one you've been dreading all week? That's the one. 3 hours of adults talking about quarterly earnings while I sit there pretending to understand. She made a face. Although Dad did promise we could get ice cream after. Just us two. No phone calls, no meetings. That sounds nice. It is. Lila started gathering her things, then paused. Hey, Mom, about the party and the house thing. Will you at least think about it? Coming back, I mean. Not forever if you don't want. But maybe just for the party. So we can all be together in the same place. Pretending to be a normal family? We don't have to pretend. I know, but it's my birthday. And the only thing I really want besides the new art supplies and the book series I keep hinting about is to have both my parents in the same room without it being weird or tense or full of apologizing. Evelyn reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. I'll talk to your father. We'll figure something out. Promise? Promise. Lila squeezed her fingers once, then bounded toward the door, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. At the threshold, she turned back. Love you, Mom. Love you too, sweetheart. And then she was gone, disappeared into the March afternoon that was trying very hard to become spring but hadn't quite committed yet. Evelyn sat alone in the coffee shop, staring at her phone. Ethan's contact information glowed on the screen. They'd been circling around this conversation for weeks, the question of what came next, of whether co-parenting could evolve into something more, or if the ghosts between them were too substantial to move past. Before she could overthink it, she typed out a message. Lila asked about the birthday party, about having it at the house. Can we talk? His response came immediately. Been hoping you'd ask. Dinner tomorrow? Just us? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was the edge of something, the moment before commitment. She could pull back, maintain her careful boundaries, keep building this new life at a safe distance. Or she could jump. Tomorrow works. 7. I'll cook. You cook now? I've been taking classes. Turns out I'm decent with pasta. Terrible with anything involving precise timing. But I'm learning. She smiled at her phone. Learning is good. It's all I've been doing for 3 months. Evelyn logged out, paid for their drinks, and walked out into the slushy March afternoon. Above her, the sky was that particular shade of gray that promised more snow. But in the distance, she could see a strip of blue trying to break through. Winter ending, spring arriving, the slow, inevitable turn of seasons that happened whether you were ready or not. Tomorrow, she'd have dinner with Ethan. They'd talk about Lila's party, about the house, about whether two people who had hurt each other so badly could find their way back to something resembling whole. But today, she'd simply walk to her apartment, sat at her kitchen table, with Flopsy keeping watch from his place of honor on the shelf, and let herself feel grateful. Grateful for therapy and second chances and daughters who insisted on being heard. Grateful for the hard work of healing and the slow accumulation of trust. Grateful for mess and complication and the courage it took to stay when leaving would be so much easier. Some families, she was learning, weren't born. They were built carefully, deliberately, one honest conversation at a time, and if they were very lucky, they survived. The birthday party happened on a Saturday in late March, when winter finally admitted defeat and let spring take the stage. Ethan's house, their house, if Evelyn was being generous with pronouns, though she still hadn't moved in, filled with 37 children, their parents, and enough balloons to lift the entire structure into the stratosphere. But that was later. First came the morning, and the moment that changed everything. Evelyn arrived at 7 a.m. to help set up, letting herself in with the key Ethan had given her 2 weeks earlier. Not a statement, he'd said, pressing it into her palm. Just practical. In case of emergencies. They'd both known it was absolutely a statement, but she'd taken it anyway. She found him in the kitchen, surrounded by evidence of culinary ambition. 3 types of pasta, ingredients for cake from scratch, and a cookbook open to a page titled Party Foods That Won't Poison Children. "You're really doing this?" she asked, setting down her bags of decorations. He looked up, flour somehow already on his cheek, despite not having started cooking yet. "Lila asked me to. Said it would mean more if I made her cake myself, instead of ordering from the bakery. That's very sweet. That's very manipulative. She knows I'll do anything if she phrases it as caring about effort over results. She's your daughter. She learned it from watching you negotiate business deals." Ethan smiled, that soft, genuine smile he'd been showing more often lately. The one that reminded her of who he'd been before the weight of expectations had hardened him. "Fair point. Coffee? Please." They worked in companionable silence, falling into the rhythm they'd been developing over the past month of weekly dinners. He focused on the cake while she assembled sandwich platters. The radio played quietly in the background, some news program neither of them paid attention to. Through the window, she could see the garden where Margaret had once hosted charity teas, now dormant, waiting for someone to give it attention. "I fired my mother yesterday," Ethan said suddenly. Evelyn's hands stilled on the cutting board. "What? From the company? From the advisory board? From any position that gave her influence over family decisions?" He cracked an egg with more force than necessary. "I should have done it years ago." "Ethan," she called Lila, directly, on her personal phone that I didn't know she had. His jaw tightened. "Told her that having you back in our lives was a mistake, that you would leave again as soon as things got hard. That Lila should prepare herself for disappointment." Rage flooded through Evelyn, hot and immediate. "She said that to a child? To our child." He set down the egg, gripping the counter. "Lila called me at work, crying. Asked if it was true. If you were going to leave again, what did you tell her? I told her that the only person leaving this family was my mother, and she was doing it permanently." He finally looked at Evelyn. "I told her that you've shown up every single day for 3 months, that you answer every phone call, attend every therapy session, Keep every promise you make. That if there's anyone in this family she can count on, it's you." Something cracked open in Evelyn's chest. "You said that? I should have said it sooner. Should have defended you 7 years ago, instead of letting her drive you away. Should have." His voice broke. "I'm sorry. I know I keep saying it, but I need you to know I mean it. I was a coward. And I let the wrong person dictate our family's shape. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that right." Evelyn walked around the counter and did something she hadn't done in 7 years. She hugged her ex-husband. Not romantically, not with any intention beyond offering comfort, but simply because he was a person in pain who needed to be reminded that he wasn't alone. He froze for a moment, then wrapped his arms around her and held on like a drowning man finding solid ground. "We were both hurting," she said quietly. "We both made mistakes. But we're fixing them now. That has to count for something. Does it count enough that you'll consider moving back in?" She pulled back, looking up at him. "I'm considering it. That's all I'm asking. Just consideration." The timer beeped. Ethan returned to his cake, and Evelyn went back to her sandwiches. But something had shifted. Some wall had come down. Some possibility had opened. By noon, the house was full of children screaming with joy, parents chatting on the back patio, and Lila presiding over it all like a small general commanding her troops. She wore a crown made of real flowers, Evelyn's contribution, and carried Flopsy under one arm like a vice president who'd been appointed to maintain order. "Mom," she called across the lawn, "can you help Marcus with his balloon animal? He wants a giraffe, but Miss Chen only knows how to make dogs." "Mom," said casually, publicly, to a yard full of people who all knew the story by now. The custodian who turned out to be the missing mother. The family reunion that happened on a elementary school stage. The 3 months of careful rebuilding that followed. Evelyn crossed the grass, knelt beside a 6-year-old named Marcus, and turned a balloon dog into something that resembled a giraffe if you squinted and used a lot of imagination. "That's perfect," Marcus declared, clearly being generous. She glanced up and caught Ethan watching her from the patio. His phone nowhere in sight, his attention fully present. He raised his glass of lemonade in a small salute. The party continued through the afternoon, games and cake and presents that would take weeks to write thank you notes for. As the sun started to sink toward the horizon and parents began collecting their exhausted children, Lila found Evelyn sitting in the garden, taking a moment of quiet. "Hey," the girl said, plopping down beside her. "Tired?" "Completely. But happy tired. Me too." Lila leaned against her mother's shoulder. "This was the best birthday ever. I'm glad. Can I tell you something? Always. When I blew out my candles, I didn't wish for toys or trips or anything like that." "No? What did you wish for?" "I can't tell you. It won't come true if I tell." "That's very wise." Lila was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. "Actually, maybe I can tell you. Because it kind of already came true just by happening." "What did you wish for?" "I wished that next year, when I blow out my candles, both my parents will be standing next to me. Not because they have to, not because I asked, but because they want to be there. Because we're a real family again." She looked up at Evelyn. "That's a good wish, right?" Evelyn's vision blurred. She wrapped her arm around her daughter and pulled her close. "That's the best wish I've ever heard. Do you think it'll come true?" "I think," Evelyn said carefully, "that the best wishes are the ones we make come true ourselves. And I think your dad and I are working very hard to make sure that wish has every chance of becoming real." "Good." Satisfied, Lila rested her head on Evelyn's shoulder. "I'm going to hold you to that." As the last guest departed, and the 3 of them, Ethan, Evelyn, and Lila, stood in the driveway waving goodbye, Evelyn felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in 7 years. Hope. Not the fragile, desperate hope of someone barely surviving, but the solid, grounded hope of someone who had done the work and earned the right to believe in better. "Stay for dinner," Ethan said as Lila ran inside to show Flopsy all her presents. "Please. I have enough leftover pasta to feed an army." Evelyn looked at the house, at the man who was trying so hard to make amends, at the door through which her daughter had just disappeared. "Okay," she said, "I'll stay." And in that moment, with the spring sun setting behind them and new beginnings sprouting all around, it felt less like a decision and more like an inevitability. Some families, she was learning, were worth every difficult step it took to rebuild them. The morning of Lila's 9th birthday dawned clear and bright, the kind of March day that made you forget winter had ever happened. In the renovated garden behind the house, now filled with vegetables and flowers, and a small fountain that actually worked, 3 people and 1 threadbare stuffed rabbit gathered around a small table set for breakfast. "Make a wish," Ethan said, holding out a single candle stuck into a waffle. Lila closed her eyes, breathed deep, and blew. The flame guttered and died. "What did you wish for?" Evelyn asked, though she knew the answer would be the same as always. "Can't tell," but also Lila grinned. "Don't need to." Because it already came true. She was right. They all knew she was right. Evelyn had moved back into the house 6 months ago. Slowly, deliberately, transforming the guest room into a studio, where she now took online classes in art therapy. Ethan had stepped back from the company, promoting a qualified CEO and moving into an advisory role that left him time for dinner with his family. And Lila had flourished, her grades improving, her confidence blooming, her loneliness replaced by the solid certainty that she was loved. They weren't perfect. Some days, old wounds ached. Some nights, arguments erupted about boundaries and expectations and the proper way to load a dishwasher. They still saw Dr. Martinez weekly, working through layers of hurt that didn't disappear just because you wanted them to. But they were present. They were trying. And slowly, imperfectly, they were building something that resembled the family they'd always been meant to be. "Dad," Lila said, syrup dripping from her fork. "Tell Mom about the thing." Ethan glanced at Evelyn, suddenly nervous. "The thing? The thing we talked about. The surprise thing." "Lila," we agreed. "I know. But I'm excited. And Mom's going to figure it out anyway, because she's really observant." Evelyn looked between them. "What thing?" Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not a ring box, they weren't there yet. Might never be there again in the traditional sense, but something else. "Lila and I were talking," he said carefully, "about how families look different for different people, and how ours doesn't look like the one we started with. But it might look like something even better." He opened the box. Inside lay a small silver pendant, shaped like a snowflake, with 3 points that caught the morning light. "The Winter Queen, the Winter Princess, and the dad who's still learning how to be present," Lila explained. 3 points. 1 family. Dr. Martinez helped design it. Evelyn took the necklace with shaking hands. It was perfect, simple, meaningful. A symbol of something hard-won and deeply earned. "I have one too," Lila said, pulling her own pendant from beneath her shirt. "And Dad has one, but on a keychain, because he said necklaces aren't his style." Ethan smiled sheepishly. "Compromise." Evelyn fastened the necklace around her neck, the snowflake settling just above her heart. "Thank you. Both of you. This is everything." "Happy birthday to all of us," Lila declared, raising her orange juice glass. "Because Mom came back, and Dad stayed present. And I got to be the reason you both became better people." "That's very humble of you," Ethan said dryly. "I learned from the best." They clinked their glasses together, orange juice, coffee, and water in a toast to imperfect families and hard-won second chances and the particular courage it took to show up every day, even when it would be easier to walk away. Somewhere in the house, a phone rang. Ethan glanced at it, then deliberately turned it face down. "Later," he said. "Right now, I'm having birthday waffles with my family. And really, what more could anyone ask for than that?" In the garden, the flowers bloomed. In the house, Flopsy sat on his shelf, watching over this family that had been broken and remade into something stronger. and in the hearts of three people who had learned that love wasn't about being perfect, it was about showing up, doing the work, and choosing each other again and again and again. Some winters, it turned out, were worth surviving, because spring always came eventually. You just had to be brave enough to wait for it.